Hi, it's Jules here. Thanks for tuning in to Jules FM. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Sam Mitchell, Premiership coach, deep thinker, and one of the most influential coaching minds in today's game. In this episode, we shift from Sam's playing career into his evolution as a coach, how he leads, how he develops people, how he creates clarity, and the philosophies that shape the way he brings out the best in others. But we pick up firstly with what separates a good coach from a great coach.
I think a lot of emotional intelligence. So I think there's obviously your own self-control, emotional regulation. All those things are really important. But then ability to understand and have empathy for other people. One of the lessons I learned, and you get told growing up to treat other people the way you want to be treated, but in coaching I wouldn't advise that. I would sort of say you need to get to know your people, get to know your players, and you got to treat them in the way they want to be treated. Some players, need a lot of love and affection and time spent, and some players just tell me how it is and I'll go and do it. And there's no right or wrong way to be coached, but there's a right and wrong way for every player. And so working those things out, I think if you get that right, then the thing that all good coaches have is great players and great talent. So your job really is to maximise the talent that you have.
Absolutely. From your perspective, is there an attribute or quality that you've seen in players that separates those that maybe make it to those that won't?
I think that the first one, I didn't mean it to be a theme of this, but willingness to learn is, I think we have players who come in and they've been stars their whole childhood.
Yeah.
And we have players that have been battlers and have been late developers. And where they start is very little reflection on where they finish in general. Not always. But if you are willing to learn, you commit to learning, and you have good self-awareness, it's very difficult to teach someone something that they think they already know. So if you have good self-awareness, you can take good feedback and you can try to improve. The other thing I would say, it's a bit corny as well, but around growth mindset. So if you think, oh well, I'm only this good and I can only work on it up to a point, then your commitment and your motivation to work on that thing is going to be lower. So if you believe, if I work hard on this, I can improve it, then that's going to motivate you for a lifetime. So I think having a genuine belief that no matter what you commit to, you can improve it.
Sam, you worked under Adam Simpson at West Coast Eagles and Alistair Clarkson at Hawthorn. Were there any qualities or lessons that they taught that you now incorporate?
I think every leader has lots of different attributes, and so they're the two AFL coaches, but I also had Peter Schwalbe in my career. I've had a lot of coaches at different levels, all the assistant coaches over the years, and I think you take bits and pieces of everyone and you think about how that made you feel, how it made the teammates feel, and you implement some things and you don't implement others. Some things to avoid and some things to implement, but I think you have to put them through the filter of who you are. So if you start doing something because another coach did it, it won't feel like you. And I think what's important is you need to figure out what you want to be and who you want to be as a coach, and then keep everything through that filter. So if you want to be a hard-nosed coach, then you can't go and do other things because it'll lead to inconsistency. And I think the one thing that all players want from their coaching staff is consistency.
I think that's amazing advice, and everything and everyone I've spoken to keeps coming back to that. It's about finding who you are and your unique strengths and really working on those. So I love that perspective. Now, if you have a player that's underperforming though, and I know you've talked about connecting with them at their level, but if they're still underperforming, how do you manage that? Like, what approach might you take?
My favourite and least favourite quote is that if they haven't learnt it, you haven't taught it. So we sort of have a philosophy that it's 50-50 between the player and you. And I think what's really important is that we sort of think of every player a bit like a house plant. So, if you've got a plant in the corner of your room and it's not thriving, it's sort of, browning off on the leaves and it's not going well, you don't get annoyed at the plant. Like it's not the plant's fault. There's something wrong with the environment it's in. Not enough light, too much light, not enough water, the pot's too big or too small, the fertilizers, too much or not enough. And you think about every athlete is a bit like that. You have to create an environment for the individual athlete to thrive. And if a player isn't performing well, then you have to check and try all these things about what's the environment they're in that's enabling them, that's restricting their growth, and how can you create a change of environment that will lead to a change of behaviour. So you work with the athlete about improving their environment, their behaviours and how they're performing. And if you can't do that, then you just keep working on it and persisting on it. And if it doesn't work eventually, then they won't survive and stay in the game. But over time, you have to realise it's the environment, particularly as the head coach, when you have so much say on the environment they're in. You can make or break environment, and it's not just the physical environment. It could be who's coaching them, the way they coach them, the way they speak to them, their self-talk models, their mental skills, their physical ailments. There's all of the different aspects. Treating every player that 50-50, you're committed with them. They have to do the work. They have to be willing to improve, but you have to create an environment that's going to let them thrive. Everywhere you go, every friend you have, every person that you interact with slightly differently according to the cues that they give you. And it's no different in a classroom or in a football club. You deal with some kids or players and you say, okay, he's engaging, he's an extrovert, he's going to be willing to ask questions in a meeting. And if I ask this player a question, that's just all that is going to do is cause anxiety. That's not going to increase their learning. So you work out those cues pretty quickly. And there's a lot of resources. I mean, I think the thing we have is an enormous amount of resource around our players. And what that does is it creates time and space to work out. I don't have the answer for every player. And I can't do it on my own. So I have a whole group of coaches and staff and psychologists and dietitians and physios and doctors and endless amount of people that can try to create the perfect environment for each individual athlete.
Yeah, that's awesome. How important is mindset and resilience for your team, and how do you teach that?
Resilience is a funny one because some players have had difficult lives, so they've got a lot of resilience. They get drafted and they've already been through, whether it's, deaths or their parents splitting up or, some difficulties in their life. In general, they have got some resilience because of something. They've had injury, for instance. And then you have some players who have been blessed and good luck to them, but they haven't needed resilience up to that point. That doesn't mean that they don't have it when those difficulties arise. But the building of resilience is one of the challenges, because you don't want players to go through difficulty, but when they do, there's such an opportunity there. So that's one of the things that we discuss is how to build resilience in a safe way. Obviously, we do it through our training, making sure they're going to the edge and not too far. In those types of ways. Mindset, we do a lot of work on mindset. I think as a coach, you're an unskilled psychologist, no different to being a teacher. You're forever working with how players think, how they talk, who they interact with, and the stories they tell themselves. Just looking at our first year players, they'll drive home at the end of their first week of an AFL experience, and they will tell themselves a story about how that week went. And that's going to dictate how they feel about themselves. That's going to dictate how they feel about the environment, and that's going to dictate their next week. So being able to have some assistance for them to make sure that the stories they're telling themselves are the right ones, that's all the things we work on.
Your sphere of influence has always been beyond the footy field. Can you talk to me about the fans, media, members of the community, and what kind of role model do you aim to be for younger players or fans watching from the sidelines?
I mean, this sounds like a funny thing to say, but I don't aim to be a role model, but I try to live, I believe that, as basic as it sounds, the decisions you make in your life will dictate the life that you lead. And the decisions that I hope to make need to be consistent with my values, what I believe, who I would like to be. I look at all the people that I admire, and I think about what I admire about them, and I try to live slightly more like them. I look at the opposite, try to avoid those things. And over time, if you're consistent in your desire to improve your values, your behaviours, I think we all do things and think, I shouldn't have done that, or I would have handled that differently if I had my time again. If you continue to be honest with yourself and monitor you how you would like to live your life, then people will perceive you, for the most part, how you are, not always. And if they don't, then you can't be too worried about that. But one of the things I admire about people is when they don't mind too much what other people think, because they believe in themselves and how they live. So if someone says, he's a horrible person, if you think that's your choice, but I know that to me, I'm not, and I'm a good person. So I live my life in that way, which gives you a level of confidence that you can lead a life that you're proud of and your kids are proud of and that your wife is proud of. And if you do those things, then the way you're perceived from others that are beyond your direct, sphere, as a sort of public figure, you obviously have more impact and more eyes on you. I meet a lot of people, and they've met you many years before, and it's not rude, but you don't remember them because you've only seen them that one time, whereas they've probably seen you multiple times in that period. Influencing more people is very secondary to what you're trying to do in your own inner circle.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think if you focus on being the best you can be in what you're doing, then that's the role modeling anyway, isn't it? So
you always want to be making progress. You always want to be improving what you're doing. You always want to live your best life, be your best self, all those corny lines.
Yeah, that's very true though. So what advice would you give to any hopefuls out there who want to be an AFL or AFLW player?
I'll be the best at something, work on your strengths. If you get an hour of training, probably do 40 minutes of working on the thing you're really good at, and still spend, that 15, 20 minutes working on some deficiencies. I think getting honest, getting a feedback loop is really important. I think finding someone who you trust to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear. I can run a meeting. I've got 3 or 4 people that work here that they'll say the meeting was great, regardless of how the meeting is. And I've got 3 or 4 people that I know I can go to and say, what do you think? And they're going to give me honest feedback. Didn't think you nailed this, thought you spoke for too long on that, moved around too much, were distracting, didn't think your slides were clear enough. This is what you could do next time. And then I believe them. I trust that they want the best thing for me. So I take that feedback on board and I know that's going to help me. So if you want to improve, find someone who you trust wants the best for you and you trust their opinion, and then be willing to listen. I think feedback's vital in your path to improvement. And they always say, they teach us, feedback's like a plate of food. Like if someone offers you a plate of food, you always say thank you. But you don't have to eat it all. Like, you don't have to take every piece of feedback and implement it. But I think if you can create strength-based learning, strength-based environment, get good mentors, get people who will tell you the truth and be committed to learning and improving yourself, then they're what I would say are the key pillars to success in the sporting environment, but probably for any environment really.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me for part 2 of my conversation with Sam Mitchell. I hope hearing his coaching philosophy, the clarity, the structure, the willingness to learn and teach gave you something you can take into your own work. Whether you lead a team, a family maybe, a classroom, or just yourself. There's so much wisdom in the way Sam thinks about improvement and people, and I'm really grateful he shared it with us. If this episode sparked something for you, or you can think of someone who might benefit from Sam's insights, make sure you share it with them. It might be exactly what they need to take the next step into their journey. And if you haven't already, hit follow so you don't miss the next episode on Jules FM. Until next time.